So here's the final result of our game. We have that in this small window, and I gave it a title, Guessing Game by your full name, so you can add your full name in there. And if we look at the elements within the body of this window, we have to the right the number of tries, so I have 1 out of 3, and this will increment as I keep guessing. Okay, and then I have a label with the font size a little bigger than the rest, and this says guess a number between 1 and 10. Okay, and then down below I have a text input, and then we have a button, and we have 2 labels at the bottom as well. This label will prompt the user whether to guess higher or lower, and here we have a label that will display the generated number. Now this is only for testing purposes, so you want to hide this label after you publish the game live, so just so we can see that we are getting closer to that number and if our message in here works well. So I'm going to start guessing 6. Okay, so it says please guess higher because the number that the computer decided to generate is number 9. Okay, so if I do 7, it will say again please guess higher. Now if I do 10, again please guess lower in here, and it says game over. Okay, now if I've done 9, it will say, so here, now if I type in 9 and guess, it says good job, but the number of tries does not increment. Okay, so here I can hit try again, and it will clear the message, it will reset the number of tries and so on. Now again, I put this as version 1.0 because you're going to add more restrictions to it as you go. This is just to demonstrate how to use the class upon building this simple game. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio and start building our game. So I'm going to close that, and if you open up Visual Studio, you can go to File, New, Project, and then make sure you choose Visual C#, and we're going to do this in a Windows application. Now let's go ahead and give it a name. I'm going to say Simple Guessing Game. And then version 1. Simple Guessing Game version 1, and then I'm going to hit OK. Okay, after you do that, this will create a new project for you. So again, go to File, New Project, and then choose Visual C# and Windows Form. Okay, now before we jump in and take the controls and add them into our form here, I want you to see where our namespaces and assemblies live. So if you go to View, Object Browser, and here we can go ahead and click on each assembly. So here's a system.configuration. We have that living in this assembly living in this DLL. So again, it gives you then the full path of the assembly where it lives. Okay, and down below you have the attributes of that assembly. So if you keep digging or go further into the assemblies, and you'll see the namespaces inside, and if you go further, then you can find out the methods and the properties of specific classes that live within those namespaces. So again, we're going to use those namespaces and assemblies on our application as well. This will keep our application alive, and then we'll use some of the attributes that it already gives us, and so on and so forth. So again, if you go to Object Browser, you can explore the namespaces and the assemblies that we're going to use. And let's go ahead and get back to form1.cs. Now you can simply click on that and then click it again, and you can change that to Guessing Game, and then hit enter. So it goes and changes the name of that, guessinggame.cs. Okay, so the extension .cs is for C#. Okay, so let me close this like that. Now this is the design view of my form. Okay, if I double click on it, I get to the code view of the form. Okay, so this is the code view, and here's the design view. I'm going to close the object browser, so I'm going to right click and close. There it is. So I have the 2 tabs, design and code. Now notice that I have an asterisk right next to the tab. That means that we made some changes where pretty much we double clicked on it and Visual Studio thinks that we did some changes. Or if we actually stretch this window, this will adjust the height and the width. Therefore, this asterisk will come in there. That means that we have not saved our file yet. Okay, so after we make changes, we need to save the file. So it will be a good habit if you just hit Control S on your keyboard to save the changes, and then that asterisk will disappear on both the code and the design view. Okay, so there's our window. Now if you want to just see the window and the executable file, so if you can click on this, this will compile, and here's our window. So this window, you can stretch it, you can maximize, you can minimize, you can move it around. Okay, so again, this is possible because of those assemblies and namespaces. Okay, so it creates our general layout, or it holds together the form so we can add our elements inside. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Alright, I have my toolbox to the left. If you don't have that, you can go to Window and then click on, or Tools, sorry, you can go to Tools and then bring up the toolbox. Usually by default you will have that to the left. Okay, and then I have our properties to the right. So here's the Solution Explorer, and you will have this on the default workspace as you open Visual Studio. You can also set the workspace to go to default as well. So you have your toolbox, which will be by default minimized, but you can click on that and then maximize them and drag the elements that you're going to need, which we're going to do that in a second. But let's talk about the properties panel here to the lower right corner. If I select the form, so whatever element you select within the design view, the properties of that element will come here. So let's actually I don't want that. Let's do this. I'm going to stretch that like that. And here's the properties. So in here, if I select the form again, I can scroll up and down and find out all the attributes that this form has. Now we're going to use the name attribute a lot. This is how we're going to refer to the form or to any of the element inside the form by the name attribute. And here I'm going to leave the name attribute as guessing game. We're not going to touch that much for the form. However, we will do that. We'll rename that for the elements that we're going to add inside that form. Okay, so if you can scroll down and look at these attributes and then play around with them and change the back color, whatever you'd like, add a background image and so on, so make it more visually pleasing. I am not going to touch on the form at all since we did the resize. So the size, the width and height, we can adjust that automatically by dragging that within the design view, and notice that the width and height in here will change. So I'm going to make it something like this. Okay, that is 353 by 205. If you want to round these numbers, you can do that. So I'm going to, let's just say 355 by 200. Okay, so you can round those numbers up, and here's our form. Okay, now let's go ahead and bring our elements in this form, and we actually want to give a title to the form. So I can come here where it says text. We can say guessing game by, okay, you can give your name in there. So I said guessing game by my name. Okay, and then hit enter, and you'll see the title coming at the top. So it says guessing game by whatever name. This side will also come up if I were to compile this. So here's the window that says guessing game by your name. Okay, great. So coming back here. Okay, notice when I compiled that, it automatically saved my file. Okay, so again, if I add a letter in here, I take out G. Notice that the asterisk comes up in here. That means that we did a change. And then I add G in there. The asterisk will still remain in there, but if I compile this, then Visual Studio will automatically save my file. There it is. Okay, so next let's go ahead and add our elements to the game. So I'm gonna click on this, so it moves my design view to the right, and let's go ahead and add, let's see what we need. You can click on all for the form, or you can click on common controls, which we're going to need a button, so I'm going to drag that in there. We're going to need a text input, so I'm going to drag that in there. We're going to need a label. There you go. Now we're going to need a label in here. We can add a label in here. We can duplicate the same label and use it. I'm just going to drag the labels from the text box, or the toolbox in here, sorry. So here, one label that says guess a number between 1 and 10. Here's the one for the tries. Then we have the one for prompting the message and the generated number. I also want to have a label in here where it says game over, and let's put that at the top. And also we're gonna have a button that says try again, and here it is. So here are the main elements that we're gonna need, and then we can go ahead and play with the values for each element as we go on. So I'm gonna go ahead and minimize that. Here it is. So let's start with this one. This one is going to say under text. So again, under text you can change the label, but if you go all the way up, this is the name of that label which you can refer to in coding. So we'll not change the name in here because we're not passing anything to this label. This is just a title that says please guess a number between 1 and 10. If I scroll down here, I'm going to say number between 1 and 10. Please guess a number between 1 and 10. Hit enter, and we can play around with the font size. So if you scroll up in here, you should see the one that says font. See that? Attribute font, and then in here we have the attribute size. So you can make that 10. Let's say we want to make it bold, so you can hit the drop down that says true for bold. There it is. Maybe let's do 9 because it goes all across. That's good enough. There it is. So we're going to leave that as it is, and let's go ahead and position our input in here and our button right there. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and give it a name and change the label for the tries. Now for the tries, we have to give it a name that we want to keep in mind, and I'm going to use Camel Casing. So I'm going to say num tries, number of tries. And if I scroll down, I can change the label. Now I can give a default label, which is going to say 1 out of 3. Now this will automatically change because we're going to pass two dynamic values for the numerator and the denominator, so we can adjust those as we wish. Okay, so I'm going to leave the size as it is, so 1 out of 3. Let's go ahead and move this a little bit here. Actually, that's good enough on the width. So I'm going to select the text input, and I'm going to do the same thing, change the name at the top. Okay, so I'm going to say users input. Okay, notice that I put the first word lowercase and the second word capital. That's called Camel Casing. So you will see most of the developers out there using the same technique. So if you scroll down here, you will have actually we're not gonna set up a default value in here. We're just gonna change the name for it. I thought it was actually for the button. So let's go ahead and take the button, and for the button I'm gonna say guess BTN, and if I scroll down here I will find out where the text is, and I'm gonna say guess. Okay, here's a label that will prompt the user guess higher or guess lower. So I'm gonna say for the name, I'm gonna say prompt user. That's for the name. Okay, and then for the text, Do you feel lucky today? There it is. And then here's the generated number. Num in mind. Let's go here and I'm going to say, let's start at with 0. Number in mind 0. Here's the label that says game over, so I'm going to scroll up. And we're not going to touch the naming. This is just a title or a static text that's going to say game over, so we don't have to pass any values in there. If we want to pass values in the future, we can go back and give it a name in here. So I'm going to say, let's change the text in here. Here's game over. And let's also make it a little bit bigger in size. So if I scroll up to font, I can hit the drop down in there. And in here, I'm going to make this 9. Make it bold. That's good enough. For the button, I can say try again. So now we have to give a name for the button, otherwise we cannot refer to it and set up an event handler. So I'm going to say try again, or let's just do again btn. This is a button. And for the label in here, for the text inside the button, we're going to say try again. There it is. So if I were to compile this, then I will have a window that has all of these. So here's please guess a number between 1 and 10, and nothing will happen when I click on the buttons, or the game over is not disappearing, and so on and so forth. So next, let's go ahead and jump into coding. So I'm going to get into the coding view, and then we'll go ahead and take it from there.